Hello and welcome to SJP Advisor Stories. In this series, we interview SJP partners and advisors to share their real-life experiences. I'm your host, G for Tit, and if you have any questions that you would like to ask an SJP partner or advisor, please feel free to comment below or reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. Hello and welcome to another episode of SJP Advisor Stories. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Vinit Mehta. Vinit, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jane. Great to be here.
We're really delighted to have you on. And I know that you retrained to be a financial advisor through the SJP Academy some time ago. So how long ago was that for you?
So I joined the Academy in the early days. So it was back in September 2012. And as you know, it's a 6-month program. So I was let loose on the wider world in March 2013.
Wow. So yeah, we did start the Academy in 2012, so one of our earliest intakes. So I'm sure it's changed a lot since you came through the training, but it sounds like there are similarities in that the training itself is 6 months if you want to get both your qualifications and skills. So before we dive into what that looked like and felt like for you, tell us a bit about yourself and what you were doing before you'd even had a thought about retraining to become a financial advisor.
Sure. So I was already in financial services, and I know obviously not everybody in the academy has come from that background. We get a real variety of backgrounds in the academy. I was in financial services, but in a different area. So I was working for HSBC. I was more on the commercial and corporate relationship management side of the business, and this was something, quite frankly, that I thought I'd probably missed the boat. I thought I was, I'd actually been told, believe it or not, in HSBC that I was too old. When I was.
How old were you, Vinit?
I was ancient. I think I was 40. I think I was 40. Was I 40? I was about 40 years old.
Wow.
Which is strange because it was only afterwards, obviously, once I did a bit more research, that I found that the average age of the advisor is actually quite a bit older.
Yeah, you would have been young in comparison to the average age of a financial advisor in the UK then, but also interestingly, still now. So you're still younger than the average advisor now at your current age.
Well, there you go. That's something that's quite self-affirming, actually. To know that. Yeah. So that was kind of what I was doing beforehand, and I think I'd sort of reached this stage where I was probably quite frustrated with what I was doing. Didn't feel right. Definitely had a bit of an itch because I was 40 years old, and I thought, well, if I don't do something now, and I always had a burning ambition to do something on my own, a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, I suppose, that it always felt quite restrictive, kind of working, in industry, etc. I just wanted to get out and do my own thing, but it was scary, quite frankly, to sort of the thought of changing your career at that age, having to sit exams, start from scratch. And in those days, obviously, there was no option to go in as an advisor in a practice. It was the only option was to start your own business. But, eternally grateful that I made that decision. As I always like to say, other than asking my wife to marry me, it's the best decision I ever made.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a few more questions around some of the things you've already shared with us. So first of all, you were working in financial services, you were in the corporate world, you were feeling a bit frustrated. Tell us a bit more about the things that were frustrating you in your current role, because I think it's important for people to sort of think about their own circumstances and what are the things that might be frustrating and that might be able to resonate with yours.
Yeah, so I think there were certain aspects of the role that I really enjoyed, and there were other aspects that I really didn't enjoy. So I think sometimes it's really important to take a step back, which is not always easy to do when you're working, Monday to Friday, and you've got family. I had young kids at that time as well.
Wow.
But it was, yeah. So it was. I think so. Taking a step back, I thought, what do I enjoy? And actually, what I enjoyed was the engagement with people and building relationships and building trust and everything else that went along with it, where those people, your clients, become more like friends often. And I think that was a bit that I really enjoyed. The bit that I didn't enjoy so much was the administration and everything that went with it. And a lot of the working within a blue chip, it's got its advantages, it's got its disadvantages as well. I've never really been one to work in in a sort of a hierarchy, and I did sort of find a lot of that quite, I was never the best at sort of climbing the corporate ladder. It just wasn't what I really wanted to do. So I think those sort of things were frustrating sometimes, and not being able to do exactly what I wanted to do. But making those connections were great, and indeed, when I did actually set up my practice, or the scary thing at the beginning is I need some clients. And I think one of my first 2 or 3 clients were previously commercial and corporate clients from HSBC. So that, and I'm forever, and they're still with me. So and I always tell them I'm really grateful, because they put their faith and trust in me, and the guy that was kind of like their relationship manager or bank manager or whatever you call it was now suddenly their financial advisor. But if they hadn't put their trust in me at the beginning, then I could never have sort of moved on from there.
That's really fascinating, and I hope people listening, that gives them confidence that regardless of the background that you join SJP Academy from, you can find those connections from your previous world, your previous employment, whatever that might be, or your previous network. Those are the people that already know, like, and trust you. So it's a good place to start. So I think that's really interesting. And then the second thing you said earlier, which I wanted to know more about, is the entrepreneurial itch. I think that's within a lot of us. So where did that stem from within you?
I think genuinely, for as long as I can remember, I think I've always felt the desire to have my own business. And I come from a family of business owners, in the sense that my father by profession was a pharmacist. He was working, he had his own business. His father, my grandfather, and his brothers had a retail business as well for several years. For over 40 years, they had a very successful business. So for me, it always felt like a natural thing to do, which, when I reflect upon that now, that's probably why I always felt a sense of frustration working in other businesses, and, rather than doing my own thing. So I think it sort of stems from that. I think when you're surrounded by business owners and people like that your whole life, it feels like a natural thing to do. And one thing that I know that my father always excelled in, and my grandfather, was service and looking after their clients, and their clients were everything, and that's something that I've tried to bring across here, and to my team now, is that our clients have to be absolutely at the center of everything we do. And it's that simple thing. If you look after your clients, they'll be faithful to you, and they'll refer other clients to you, and they'll want to do business with you.
I love that. So while we're on that topic then, if you compare, you already mentioned finding your first clients. If you look back to those first few years as being an advisor, finding your first clients took a lot of work and effort. How many new clients of yours now come from referrals versus you actively sourcing them yourself?
Virtually all our clients come from referrals, actually, and it's a combination of clients coming from existing referrals coming from existing clients, and also with professional introducers who we've built really good connections with, sort of like accountants, solicitors, people like that, that we would work with, simply because they, I always say that our clients are our most precious commodity. So for anyone to trust sort of referring a client to us, it's not something we take lightly at all. It's we know that we've got to go above and beyond, because we only want them to go back to their accountant or solicitor and say, thank you, that was really good, and we've learned something different, or we've decided to do X, Y, and Z, whatever. But at the very least, they've got to go back with with positive feedback.
Fantastic. I love that. So we're going to go backwards a little bit. We'll come back to the clients a bit later on. So I'm just going to go back to when you were working within the financial sector. You'd never given advice before. You weren't qualified to give advice either, but you were feeling a little bit frustrated. At that point, how did you hear about SJP?
So it was strange. I mean, I'd come across SJP before, in my previous life. I'd heard of St. James's Place, but I didn't really know much about it. And then I think sometimes, that all sort of it's a bit cheesy, but they're saying that some things happen for a reason. And around that time, when I was sort of feeling frustrated, and I was already looking for jobs outside, which, and I was looking at even at other opportunities as well, in terms of doing my own things. I was looking at potentially investing into a franchise.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was around that time that it seems every year, I know a lot of the big sort of blue chips do this. It seems to be December every year with HSBC that they announce their restructures. So it was, for me, it was actually, obviously for a lot of colleagues, it was terrible that, especially just before Christmas. But I was basically given an option. It was more or less a voluntary redundancy. There was another role I could have gone into, but I was told I could take redundancy. Now, the best thing for me actually was the garden leave, because it was 3 months where I was suddenly given the opportunity to step off the hamster wheel and think, what do I want to do with the rest of my life?
Yeah.
And it really did feel like a now or never kind of moment. But it was great. And there was I remember sort of going through an exercise where I would almost sort of go through, what do I really enjoy doing, what am I good at, and then looking at potential career paths for myself. But it all seemed to point towards doing my own thing. And one of the things that did sort of come up on this thing that I was doing was financial advisor. But I just said, no, there's no way I can't be a financial advisor. I think that thing that HSBC had said to me, where you're too old, it's too late, had kind of just got embedded in there, and I'm like, no, I can't do this. So I kind of put that aside, and I was, as I said, sort of going ahead with a franchise. I was more or less had my heart set on that. And it was scary, because at that time my kids would have been, trying to think now, 6 and 10, I think. At that time they would have been about that age, so young. They were pretty young. But I'd made that decision. Then a friend of mine, who was actually the financial planning manager in my team at HSBC, who'd always said to me, look, you should do this. We used to have joint meetings. We used to, talk a lot. And he always was very encouraging. He said, you could do this. But I always thought, especially with the feedback from HSBC, I thought that's not going to happen.
It's so impactful, isn't it? If you hear one, I think like the chain reaction of one comment that was said to you by one person, just one person's opinion, had impacted you quite deeply, I would say. And I think when negative things are said and shared, that does often happen.
It does. You're absolutely, G. I think it knocks your confidence. So you sort of think, well, I mean, I'm pretty self-confident, but I thought that was a step beyond that, but I can't do this now. That's a kind of that was a dream that I should have jumped on that boat a long while ago. But he was, by this time, this friend of mine who's living in Hong Kong by now, and he's a very successful advisor there. He said to me, well, look, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, look, I'm 100% sure I want to do my own thing. And he said, have you thought about St. James's Place? So I sort of said, well, not really. I said, why would I think of St. James's Place? Now, he didn't even know anything about the academy. He just heard of St. James's Place, obviously being a financial advisor. So he said, well, why don't you contact them and see if there's an opportunity there for you to do something? So I was like, well, I think I'm just ticking a box here, but okay, fine, I'll do it. So I went on the website, and as you said, it was the early days. It was only sort of like, it was, in fact, it was June, it was about this time. So it was July 2012. And it was only that year that the Academy was launched. So I think the second intake had just started. And on the website, it said St. James's Place Academy, and there were videos of people who'd been in different professions and made a change. And then suddenly I thought, well, there's maybe this can happen. There is potentially an opportunity here. So I filled out the form online, sent it off, and then lo and behold, I got a call and then an email a few days later, and that was it. That's how it all started.
Wow. And what was the franchise you were looking into? What type of business?
It was actually a recruitment business, a recruitment franchise, and there was no particular reason for that. I think, I was kind of looking at things. I thought, I don't really fancy sort of making Subway sandwiches or anything like that. So I thought, it's sort of like maybe being on the phone, speaking to people and all that. That's something that I could do. But in retrospect, I think I would have, recruitment is a tough business, and you've got to have, very thick skin, and you've got to, in every business, you have to be resilient. But, I'm not sure. I think this friend of mine said it's not going to be the right thing for you in the long term. I think it'll wear you down. And he just felt that, and he knew me very well because we worked together, and he said, I think you'd be much better suited to this. And and then thankfully I took his advice and
came to explore it.
Yeah, the whole 4-stage interview process, etc.
Oh, well, we'll come to that in just a second. So I've got a question around just that kind of like for like comparison with, because you were starting a business with SJP versus almost buying a business in a box with a franchise opportunity. Could you see similarities, or were there differences? What was appealing between the two options?
I could see similarities, in the sense that, like with a franchise, you've got a turnkey operation there. There's a brand there. You've got all the know-how. Everything's laid out for you. You've obviously got to have the skills to be able to run that business successfully. So with this, what I saw was the opportunity of saying, well, SJP have potentially given me all the tools that I need, and to help me through the exams, and which was quite frankly daunting. This is I'm trying to think now, 2012, and the last time I'd really done an exam was when I left university in 1993. So, almost 20 years since I've done exams, and I'm talking about sort of doing 6 exams now, and it seemed overwhelming. But, I was quite reassured when I spoke to SJP and said the level of support that we'll get to help me through the exams and give me sort of training in terms of what the day-to-day job looks like, which was great. So I think having, that sort of thing about having a toolkit almost, and then it's down to you, it sort of chimed with me as being fairly similar to what I'd be doing if I did invest in the franchise.
Absolutely, and no upfront investment with us as well, which I guess was appealing.
No, absolutely, yes, correct.
Okay, so let's go back to then that onboarding process. So this was very early stage of the academy. I'm sure the process has evolved since you went through it, but the ethos has remained the same, and I know that because I've been here for 5 years out of the last 11 that you've mentioned, and I've seen it evolve in that period of time. But there are elements that remain within the process deliberately. So you mentioned 4 stages for you back then. So what was that like, and did you see the value in each stage?
Yes, yeah, I did. It was interesting that there were times when I sort of had to question myself, saying, is this a job, or is this because going through that many interviews, I thought, is this really me starting my own business? Because I'm going through interview stages here. But it was good because it made me think, creating the business plan as to what good looks like, and it was quite interesting that kind of what I imagined it would look like in real life. And then speaking to Tom, who was Tom Moran at that time, he was saying, well, actually, this is what the reality looks like, and explaining how the process would work. It was great because it just helped me to understand really how in reality this would work. So often what your perception is and what reality is are two different things. But I mean, the opportunity was obviously there, and it just seemed like an incredible opportunity to be able to do something that I was absolutely sure that I would enjoy, but that would be financially rewarding as well.
Absolutely fantastic. So there's elements of the process where you're meeting with people, you're having to do a bit of homework in thinking about business plan and how you're going to get this business off the ground. And I can appreciate why you were questioning things at the time, because you were the one starting the business, yet we were interviewing you.
Yes.
So I think that process has become a little bit less formal over the years, which is probably welcome to people watching. But the ethos of just helping people understand and make an informed decision about this. And as you mentioned actually earlier at the beginning, back then when we started the program, the only option was to start a business and be a business owner, whereas now you have the option to either start a business or join an existing practice such as yourself or any other company within the SJP infrastructure, any other advisory business. So we need to help people make that decision, whether it's right for them, which of those options is right for them. So everything that we suggest people do is really for their own benefit. So that hasn't changed. So now you're in the academy then, you've joined us. And I know way back then we just had one academy in London, and you'd have to travel to that in person to do your training. So that's something that's changed dramatically. So we've now got a locationless academy, and it's a lot of virtual training. But how did you find the training and the exams?
So the training I thought was very good, and especially sort of getting through the exams, I thought that was excellent. We were lucky; we had some excellent trainers who helped us. There were workshops, so we never felt alone. I think that was the thing. That never felt alone, because it can feel like a really lonely place when you're suddenly you're in a very alien environment. You're sort of doing exams and stuff, and for me, as I said, it'd been almost 20 years since I'd done exams. But I often talk about the camaraderie within the academy, and I know things have changed a little bit now. Some of it is virtual, but having had the benefit of someone who I've just put through the academy now myself, who's joined me as an advisor, I can see there is still the camaraderie there. There's still the opportunity to build relationships, and that was really important, because we were all in a situation, of sort of 20 of us who'd made that decision, to make a complete difference in terms of our lives and hopefully the lives of others. And doing those exams, we were going through the same sort of trials and tribulations. Not everyone got through every exam first time, but it was okay, because there were people around there to lift them and help them to get through those exams. And I'm happy to say that some of those relationships last to this day. And there's we all sort of get together. Well, I said we all. There's about 7 of us get together every Christmas. We all got together for last year to celebrate 10 years since we started the academy, and some of the old managers came and joined us as well. And
fantastic! I love that, and I have heard that echoed in other people's stories, that cohort that you're learning with are still maybe the first place you go to for, how do I do this? Who do I need to contact? Or it just might be a quick question or a quick piece of support, and somebody from that original cohort will help you. And that is something that we've kept. So even though it's a virtual academy, people go through it in cohorts of up to 25. And that's to keep it so you do have that WhatsApp group and it is meaningful. But also, if you're on on a virtual call, it's small enough for everybody to be interactive. You don't want it to be too big where it's just, present only mode. So
Yes.
some
Yeah.
of that is, and of course there are some in-person elements as well, so we couldn't have a room for too many people too. So that's so lovely to hear. And where did you go at Christmas?
It was I'm terrible with names. It was inevitably a pub in the city somewhere.
Where it
You
all
know,
began.
where it all began. So we'll meet up there, and then yeah, and then afterwards, I don't know, probably end up somewhere else, which I'll fail to remember now. But it was a good night, obviously.
Oh, amazing. So academy training was good. What about additional support? So did you get academy development managers back then? Did you have a dedicated person assigned to you?
Yes, we did. So, and I think that's fairly similar now. I think in terms you have a transition manager or someone while you're sort of transitioning from the academy to becoming an advisor or a partner in your own right. So yeah, I did. I had a manager back then, and then I was then eventually once I reached a stage where I was at a stage where I could move on. I then joined what was then the Elstree location, and then there was one of the Elstree managers that sort of took over. But I think that sort of having an academy development manager was also really helpful because there is a bit of hand holding and that's required, especially at that sort of early stage, because coming out the other side, you've done the exams, you've done everything, and you're like, okay, well, now what? I'm supposed to just go out there and do this thing, but it can be scary, but it was ultimately having the right people around you really helps.
Amazing. And did you have a mentor as well as a development manager?
I did. I was, lucky enough to have a very good mentor who became a very good friend. And now we're neighbours. Now actually, we've got our offices right next to each other here in Barnet. So this is the boardroom which we share, and our offices. My office is on that side. That's his office over there. And as I said, he was a great mentor. And it's great now that our teams get together. So we do things together. We'll go out together at Christmas. We'll probably do something before the end of summer together as well. So that's really nice as well. He was very supportive, and I feel that a lot of the advice he gave me in those early days were really crucial in helping me get my sort of foot off the ground. And it's great that we're still friends.
I love that. And there's something internally that we all describe as the spirit of the partnership. And I think that just demonstrates exactly what that means, that story. So everybody that joins the academy still to this day has a mentor. And if you are starting your own business, it will be somebody like yourself who owns a business within the SJP partnership. So what a lovely story. I love that. Thank you. So something you mentioned in our pre-call was when you're starting a business, having a passion and making sure that is true. So I wanted to ask you around like the passion for you. When you're starting a financial advice business, most people might think that you need some kind of interest or passion in the financial side. But when we were speaking before, you were mentioning actually the passion for you was more the people. So do you want to talk us through the difference between those two and what's more important for you?
Yeah, completely. And I think that is really important because even before I kind of went down the joining HSBC and a couple of other corporates before that, I tried my hand at starting a business years ago and doing my own thing, and it didn't sort of go completely to plan, but that's okay. I think now actually when I look back at it, I sort of think I look back upon it a lot more favorably now than I did at the time, because you realize actually I learned a lot from that, and if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have been able to do this. But I think going back, and I've lost my thread slightly. Sorry.
The passion for people.
Passion, yeah, sorry, the passion for people. This is a problem when you're a waffler like me. You see, you lose your thread. No, I think the passion for people it's really important, because to do this job, because the connection I was trying to make there is when I tried to do something before, it was in a field that I didn't really have a passion for, but it's where there was an opportunity that was presented to me, which, to a certain degree made a success of it, but my heart was never really in it. And I think if your heart's not really into something, there's a ceiling to success. You can only go so far. But if your heart's in something, if you're really passionate about something, and in this instance, you're absolutely right. It wasn't finance, it was people. It was being able to speak with people, being able to engage with people, being able to help people. And building those sort of relationships is great. It's a privilege. And I think when you have that kind of passion, it's a great place to start. It's a great foundation for doing what we do, because this is what it's all about. It's by having sort of face-to-face advice and being able to help people in terms of doing the best for themselves, their families, and the next generation.
Definitely. So in your mind, to be a successful financial advisor, what's more important in terms of transferable skills, people skills, or mathematical, technical skills? What in your mind is the leader in those two things?
100% people skills. That's 100% people skills. I think I think technical ability, all of that sort of stuff can be learned. People skills it's difficult to do that. You've got to. I'm not saying that everyone is naturally adept at that, but I think that if you've got the ability to be able to engage with people, that's the important part. Some people are going to be better than others at networking, or just walking into a gallery and just starting up a conversation, where someone else might think that's the worst thing in the world. I don't want to do that. But it's just being able to engage with people and being genuine, and being able to have conversations with people, because I've seen people who are technically very good, flew through the exams, but they struggled on the other side, because they didn't necessarily have the ability to engage with people. So I think that people have different skill sets, and I think the most important one is definitely people skills.
Fantastic. That's really good to hear. So you mentioned some of your first clients came from your original or your previous working environment. So clients from your previous or working at HSBC. Tell us a bit more about that. You've mentioned networking too. What was it like when you were starting from zero clients and you suddenly had to onboard some clients? What were the things that SJP kind of encouraged you to do, and what did you find worked for you?
Well, it was quite interesting. I mean, the initial, we had a visit from somebody. I think back in those days, it was somebody from the marketing department came down and sort of helped us. It was all paper based in those days. It was a map of, but I don't think it's changed that much. It's just all electronic now. It's just like, you had to literally write down on there, where do you think your clients will come from? So, it could be from, friends, family, places you've worked, etc. And I remember I sort of filled that out. And back in those days, we had my office was the converted garage at home, so I had that stuck up on the wall, and I'd look at that every day, and sort of work on that, and look at sort of how many meetings have I got in the diary, have I contacted so and so. And then afterwards, that we moved, and that sort of got put in in a box somewhere, and years later I found it. And it was actually fascinating, because I went through there, and it was really interesting to see how many of them had become clients. But actually, what was more interesting, the ones that hadn't, because a lot of the ones that I thought would be 100% they're going to become clients, didn't become clients. And the ones that I would never have dreamt would become clients did.
Wow.
So it just shows you can't assume, and it's really interesting how these work. And sometimes it can take, it's a real long ball game, because I think, you've got to be prepared to be patient, because some friends, family probably sort of saw it and said, "Oh, how long is Vinit going to be doing this for? Maybe a couple of years, and then he'll be back doing something else." So you can understand why they may have been hesitant to sort of put their trust and faith in me straight away if I'm going to be gone soon. But over the years, as they kind of saw, well, actually, that this is what he's doing, and he's obviously, he's managed to make a career of this, then gradually you find that those people will put their trust in you and their faith in you.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And do you have, now you're sort of 10 plus years in, do you have a particular type of client that your business likes to work with, or are you literally open book, you'll work with anyone that you get on with?
Well, I think we work with different sort of types of people. I would say that in terms of probably the main ones that we work with, we do a lot of strategic sort of planning for business owners, which I think has worked really well. And I think having that sort of like commercial background as well has really helped. I think in terms of speaking with business owners and connecting the dots in terms of financial planning for their business and for themselves personally. And we deal with a lot of sort of executives in blue chips, mainly sort of, we do quite a lot around sort of media and entertainment, sort of I'm not sort of mega stars or anything. I'm talking about in the sort of concert promoters and things like that. We're in that kind of, we've managed to find a bit of a niche in that world.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. And for those people tuning in who maybe at the start of their discovery journey, would you mind sharing with people like what it is that a financial advisor does? How do you help people? What do you help people with, in your words?
That's a good question. I think it's helping make sense of everything. It's helping actually just I think make the complicated far more simple, and helping them create a blueprint for their future. So that the old kind of thing, I always remember someone saying when I was in the academy and an advisor came in, it's saying, what he would say is, well, it's about understanding where you are now, where you want to be, and my job is to find out the best way to get you there. And I think that's, if I'm honest, I still say that to people now, because I think it's absolutely true. It's still the simplest way I can explain what we do.
That's brilliant. And I love the simplicity in the way you explain it, because I think finances can sometimes feel overwhelming for people. So just to talk about it in simple terms and then help people to navigate, and then so they feel like they understand the things that you can help them with, that's really powerful. Thank you. So another question around your sort of previous career to now. You were in financial services. It sounds like you were in kind of relationship management roles, so sort of quite focused on people. Mm-hmm. What would you say are the key sort of transferable skills that you brought with you from your previous career to this one?
So there's a few things. I'd say, one of them is being able to, as I think, to being able to engage with people, to be able to, I suppose, win their trust and confidence in you. It's something that it's absolutely transferable, because if you're in that type of role where building relationships is a crucial part of what you do, and you've become skilled at doing that, that's something that's going to serve you really well in this career, because it is so much about trust. There's so much about it. It comes down to situations where it's at the early days it was very much about St. James's Place, as in, like, when I was starting out, the St. James's Place name was really important to me, because I had no track record, obviously, as a financial advisor. So I was very much leaning on the brand and the reputation. And then over the years, that's become far less. and it's become much more about us having our own brand, our own identity, but very much under the umbrella, and proud to be under the umbrella of SJP. But it's, people now would become clients because of the experience that people they know have had as being clients of our practice. So, and that's what we try to do here. I think, it's about service. If you believe in offering, a great service, a great level of service to people, then it's something that will just serve you really well here as well.
Fantastic. So I've got a sort of a financial question, and we won't go into sort of detail or numbers specifically, but a question I often get asked is, how quickly can I sort of earn what I was earning in my role before this role? And some people have had career breaks, so they're thinking about a role that might have been a few years before that. But that's often how, a common question. So for you, you're working in the financial sector. How long did it take you to sort of earn what you were earning before?
So I think it was about, I'd say it's about a couple of years before we got there. And that was about what I was expecting. That's what I sort of factored in because, having worked with businesses anyway, I always know that those first 2 years are crucial. This is obviously talking very much about going out on your own as opposed to being an advisor. So, when you're sort of starting from scratch, you've got to take, I think it's going to take a couple of years to get to where you want to be, whether it's breaking even or whatever. But in my instance, getting back to earning what I was earning before, it took about a couple of years. But I think a lot of that sort of comes down to the situation here. I was just speaking to my advisor who's come through the academy now this morning, and the situation is, obviously inherently different for him because whilst there's still a lot of similarities there in terms of he's come from a similar background, a similar age to I was when I started. There are here a bank of, there are clients here for him to see. And that makes a huge difference. It's just having people to see. Whereas, 10, 11 years ago, I was just searching for people to see. A lot of coffee meetings, trying to persuade people to see. So I think, I think, in terms of earnings, I think a couple of years, definitely. I mean, there are people that have got there quicker, for sure. It really comes down to you. But I think if anyone is starting the business, anyone who's starting on their own, I would always say, try to keep a couple of years worth of expenditure in the bank, because you don't want to have the pressure of having to pay bills when you're trying to start a business. If you can do that, then that will just, it focuses your mind. It means it lets you go, you make the right decisions. You're not being led by anything else that's going on at home. You just focus on the business.
That's really important, isn't it? And actually 2 years might feel like a long time, but actually to get back to where you were earning, because I'm sure you were earning a reasonable amount in the job that you were doing before, is actually really quick when you look at the grand scheme of things. And actually once you've achieved that level, there's no cap on then what you can achieve after that.
No, there really isn't. And it's interesting because, like when I went through all of this in the interviews back then, and we were talking about what the potential earnings were and that if you build a business, a lot of it kind of, it didn't seem realistic at the time, because I thought, well, surely it can't be. But actually, if you're prepared to put in the hard work and do the right things, then it does happen. And it sort of came quicker than I could have imagined, actually. And it's hugely satisfying when you've built something like that from scratch. It's great. You can look back and sort of say, like, where we were 10 years ago. It's great. We talk about this now, as I said, us guys in the academy, we still talk, and it's nice to sort of see where we were then and where we are now.
Absolutely. And I think it's really nice for people to see you who are sort of coming to explore the opportunity and have that kind of 10-year view, which is really lovely.
Yes.
So when you first started, did you ever suffer from imposter syndrome?
I still do. No, no, it's not. Um, I did. I really did. I really did suffer from. I think I must have had imposter syndrome for. I'd say if I said a year, I'm probably being conservative. It's probably more like 2 years. So it was just strange because when you've come from a different world and now you're sort of you're advising on things that you would never have really spoken to people about before: pensions, investments, estate planning. um, so I very much went to my comfort blanket, which was protection, as in sort of life insurance, critical illness cover, because I'd worked in that field before and I knew it well. So a lot of the business that I did in the early years was very much based around that. But you're learning on the job, and actually you realize a lot of it is about confidence, because once you have confidence, actually, yes, I have got this knowledge, and I know that my advice is good. It doesn't matter that I haven't been doing this for 20 years. My I actually done the exams relatively recently, but more than that, it's actually living and breathing it every day. And the confidence builds, and then that suddenly all the other sort of um, the doors start opening in terms of investments, pensions, and estate planning, etc.
Absolutely. And to give people a bit of confidence in the early stages, when you are out there seeing clients for the first time, you're under supervision, you'll be in client meetings with somebody with oversight of you until you reach competent advisor status. All of your work is checked as you go through the academy as well, through our assurance team. So there isn't any way you can give a client bad advice. It's not possible, because there's sort of a 2-3 tiered checking process. And
Yes.
that gives you confidence, and that helps speed up your learning, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, again, it is that kind of, as I said, having the right people around you, and having that sort of that safety net, I think was really important, because you're absolutely right. I think, the biggest fear is, what if I go out there and I say the wrong thing? But then, one thing that I really also sort of learned pretty quickly is that we've got some fantastic resources within SJP. So, our tax and technical department, our pensions technical department, investment consultancy, who, once in a while, I still contact them. I will still give them a call. But whereas now it might be, twice a month, I might give them a call, or 3 times a month. Back then it was almost daily, to the point where we knew each other on a first name basis. Because it would be like every client and every case that I saw, I just wanted to double check this.
Yeah.
And you've got some fantastic brains there in Cirencester, who were able to give me the reassurance. And I'd always start the conversation with, I'm an academy partner and I need some help. But then they were really patient, fantastic, in terms of helping us, in terms of advice, reassuring that the advice was correct.
Yeah.
And having those sort of the managers and that around us as well, and everything else, just to make sure that we were doing everything correctly, was a huge source of comfort.
Fantastic. And throughout your journey to date, this is quite an open question, so you might take a while to answer it, but what have you enjoyed the most?
Okay, so I think the journey, and I think you've got to enjoy the journey, because it's the growing and going from. I realized that I really enjoyed building this business and building fantastic relationships along the way. Um, as I said, it's a privilege. That these people have put their trust and faith, and and hopefully they feel as though we're paying it back to them in terms of the service we're providing. But I think the most enjoyable thing has been building to where we are now, and seeing the business grow from where we were, it was just me on my own, to now having a great team around me, where there's 2 other advisors as well as myself, and 3 in our back office, and a couple of guys who hopefully will become advisors, next year as well. So it's actually, I'm really excited about the future. The past is great, and the journey of the last 10 years has been amazing, but I'm really excited about the next 10 years because I can kind of see now where we're going in the future, and it excites me to see where these guys are going to be as well. So that's kind of what's given me, I think, the most joy. I think what I've enjoyed the most. But it's, I think, what's giving me joy now is thinking about what's to come.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. So I'm going to ask you to cast your mind back one more time, Vinit, about when you were going through those first 2 years, when you were climbing up to sort of, as you said, break even. What was
Yeah.
that like for your support network, your personal support network at home? How was your career transition for them, would you describe?
Well, I think it's really important to have the support of your other half and your support network. I think that's incredibly important. Um, to sort of, but to be honest, I think though at the beginning when I was going to do this, I think my wife, she normally makes the right call, but in this one she made the wrong call, and I constantly remind her of this all the time. This is my one trump card. Over 23 years, I've got one, but this is the one that I use constantly because she thought it would be a mistake. She'd obviously seen me try my hand at doing something on my own before, which, as I said, hadn't worked out. She was scared it might happen again, and she was understandably worried. She's the backbone of our family, and we've got two young kids, and she didn't think it would be the right thing to do, and it seemed like too steep a mountain to climb. Sort of going through exams, starting a business from scratch, making that a success at that age, it just seemed too late. But I convinced her that I'm absolutely sure this is the right thing to do. But that first year, obviously it's tough. It was really tough. I planted loads of seeds. I mean, that's the kind of saying I always to the guys here. I said, just have lots of coffee meeting, plant lots of seeds. Let people know, let them know you're there. So when the time comes, they'll know who to call. But that first year was tough, and what I, again, just looking at proportionately, what I earned in my first, I suppose, 12 months was probably about, I'd say about a third of what I would normally have earned. So, my wife was, she was like, "What are you doing? What have you done?" Type of thing, and it was tough, but I was absolutely confident. I said, "No, this will work. You've just got to give it a bit of time." And sure enough, the second year was much better, and the third year is when we really took off, really did take off in a big way. So you've got to have um, absolute patience, I think, confidence in yourself, and you've got to have persistence, because not every door is going to instantly open to yourself, but um, if you've got those sort of things, there's resilience there as well. That it's the right thing for you, for your future. And as I said, you're willing to put in the hard work, then things do fall into place probably quicker than you'd realize.
Are any of your family showing any interest in joining you in the business?
Well, it's funny you should say that. Yeah, well, yeah, my son sort of makes noises now and again. He's 17 now, and my daughter's 21. She'll be 22, and she's actually just doing an internship with another SJP practice in town at the moment. So she's enjoying it. I gave her the option of doing it here, but obviously she didn't want to spend a month working for the old man and with a CV that's got my name on it. So she's working with another partner. She's having a great time. It's a great way for her to get a bit of exposure in terms of what we do. And it's really interesting. For me, it tickles me that she sort of comes home and she's saying things and using terminology that I would never have expected her to use because she's learning everything there. So, who knows? The door is open. If they wanted to, I would, encourage them to do it. I absolutely would. I think it's a fantastic career, but it's very much going to be their choice. I'm not going to push them in that direction at all. I'll leave it to them.
Fantastic. And it sounds like you know you've got another at least 10 years and more with your practice plan. So they've got plenty of time to kind of go out there into the world of work and figure out what they want to do and come back to you if they want to, can't they?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's important as well. I think it's important for them to go out, do their own thing, and explore different avenues. I've seen this with other partners who friends where their children have done other things. They could have become a solicitor. One of them did something completely different, but then eventually they joined the business. And I think that's really nice, actually. I think it's a good plan to go out there, let them explore different things. And then, as I said, if they decide of their own volition, that actually what dad does or mum does looks quite interesting, I wouldn't mind that, then that's great. And I think from a client's perspective, I think it's great as well. My it was about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we did a client event, and my daughter came along, and we had a raffle there for the foundation, and she was out there sort of trying to get everybody to dig deep, and I was sort of playing on the fact that it was her birthday the following day, so and all that. So but they all remember her. They all remember it. My wife was there as well, and clients would always ask me. They said, "How's your wife? How's your daughter?" And I can kind of imagine if there came a day where I said, "Well, look, I'm going to retire now. I'm going to sort of take a back seat, but my son or my daughter or someone was, if that was what they wanted to do, would be taking over." That's a nice story, and I think that's
Yeah,
nice from a client's perspective as well.
absolutely. Ah, well, we'll look forward to hearing how that pans out in a few years' time. That's brilliant. So, final question. First of all, thank you very much for going down memory lane with us and sharing your experience. But
Pleasure.
my last question is for the people watching. What advice would you give to them if they're sitting on the other side of this screen, they've listened to this conversation, they're considering potentially becoming a financial advisor through our academy? What would you say to them?
I'd say, listen, it's a fantastic opportunity. It's genuinely, it's been life changing for me, and what it's allowed me to do is to lead a career that I always wanted, that I enjoy, that every day, despite challenges, and there are challenges, I still go home feeling actually I still love what I do. I love every single day, and it's enabled me to give my family the life that I always wanted them to have as well. So it's a great opportunity. I think if you feel that you've got those skills, that the people skills that are transferable, um, and some of the other things, hopefully, that they'll sort of learn by talking to people in the academy, then it's absolutely something they should do. I think it's an opportunity too good to be missed.
Thank you so much, Vinit. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I hope you enjoyed going down memory lane as much as I did.
I
And
did, yes.
thank you for
Thank you.
sharing your insights.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, G.